Heath Bell had a very interesting career, going from a forgotten reliever who the Mets didn't even want to replacing All-Star Hall of Fame closer Trevor Hoffman to being the face of a failing rebranded Marlins franchise to out of the league just a couple years later. The man is known for being a comedian and a great presence in the baseball world, but let's take a look back at someone who made the Hall of Fame ballot and fell off without receiving a single vote because he might have had a better career than you remember. Heath Bell's a great character across baseball, and it's about time we look back at the career that he had, spanning 11 major league seasons. Before we begin, it would really mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel. Less than 5% of my viewers are actually subscribed, and subscribing is the easiest way to help any YouTube channel. So if you want more content from me or other really great baseball creators out there as well, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into Heath Bell's electric career. Heath Bell grew up in Oceanside, California, and was a three-sport athlete in high school, playing baseball, football, and basketball before attending Santa Ana College, becoming a freshman All-American in their league. He was drafted in the 69th round of the 1997 draft by the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, but didn't sign, and the next season went undrafted before signing with the Mets as an undrafted free agent. It took him 6 years in the minors to make his debut, but for those first 3 years, he was just a taxi reliever for the Mets. From 2004 to 2006, he had a 4.92 ERA with a 1.47 WHIP, but his peripherals look good with a 3.67 fielding independent pitching, which is a defensive removed metric just solely based on the outcomes that a pitcher can control. After 2006, unfortunately for Bell, things looked kind of bleak. He was out of minor league options. Players only get 3 years where they can be sent down to the minors before they have to stick on the 26-man roster, and he was 29 years old heading into the 2007 season. His AAA coaches said the Mets didn't believe in him and that his best opportunities to succeed would most likely be elsewhere. Bell finally received a break in November when he was included in a trade to the San Diego Padres. With Bell went Royce Ring for outfielder Ben Johnson and relief pitcher John Adkins. The real headliner of this deal was Ring for the Padres, and after the trade, his wife Nicole asked him to go ahead and quit baseball because he was the throw-in piece. He wasn't even the main piece the Padres wanted. After a nice discussion, Bell convinced her to have one more year in baseball, and if things didn't work out, he'd go ahead and retire and spend time with his kids and his wife, as he's a big family man. Well, 2007 was a breakout year for Bell, pitching in 81 games, which is half of all the games the Padres played, which for a reliever, that's a lot. Going 6-4 with a 2.02 ERA, a 2.50 FIP, and a WHIP of 0.961, which is less than a walk and hit per inning pitch, which is incredibly impressive. He quickly found himself in a stacked bullpen, pitching in high leverage situations for a Padres team that, although wasn't going to make a deep run in the postseason, seemed like they had a lot of hope coming up on the horizon. After his success, he was able to tell his wife, "I'm going to keep playing baseball," and he quickly found himself as the setup man to Hall of Famer Trevor Hoffman as Scott Linebrink left in free agency. He continued to have another very good year, going 6-6 with a 3.58 ERA, 3.34 FIP, and a 1.205 WHIP. Although it wasn't as good as his previous season, it established that he had the potential to be a very good player for the Padres going forward, and with 3 years of team control, things were looking good for Bell in a Padres uniform. He also loved living in Southern California and loved playing for the team. He also established himself as a clubhouse jokester, with players like Jake Peavy noting that he was part of the life of the Padres. That following offseason, Trevor Hoffman left in free agency to the Milwaukee Brewers, and Bell basically secured the closer job. Hoffman's Hell's Bells, which was the entrance that he came out to, and whenever the Padres came to close the game, changed into Bell's Hell, as Heath Bell went on one of the most dominant 3-year stretches in Padre history, and maybe for a reliever all time, save for the greats. From 2009 to 2010, he put up phenomenal stats. His first year in the closer role, he led the National League with 42 saves. 2010, he had an ERA sub-2, and continued just 3 straight All-Star Game dominant performances, with an infamous sliding into the pitcher's mound in one of them, winning the Reliever Man of the Year twice and the Delivery Man of the Year once, which was a precursor to MLB's Reliever of the Year. That final season, he was also the highest paid player on the 2011 Padres at $7.5 million, which explains why they were so bad, and he even finished 8th place in Cy Young voting in 2010. That's just a pure stretch of dominant for Bell, who at the time was one of the most exciting players in baseball, not only for his on-the-field performance, but just because he was an electric player that fans loved to see play. He'd make things interesting on the mound. He'd make things exciting for a fan and engaging. It was almost like Banana Ball pre-Banana Ball, which he actually did his slide last season with Banana Ball as well. So he really was just a fun player to watch and someone that Padres fans and really fans around all of Major League Baseball really liked and enjoyed. Knowing that 2011 was his last season under team control and the Padres firmly out of the playoff race, their general manager Jed Hoyer looked to trade him, but he didn't find a deal worth going for and decided to keep the guy who loved being a Padre and someone that the Padres wanted to keep in San Diego to see if they can sign him to a long-term deal. Bell wanted an extension, Jed Hoyer wanted an extension, so they started to work on it, but hit a little bit of a snag over the year requirements. Bell wanted 3 guarantee years, while Hoyer wanted 2 and a team option, which would limit Bell as he would get older and older, and relievers tend to fall off a cliff. With many teams interested in him in free agency and a change away from general manager as Hoyer got fired and replaced for John Burns, talks with the Padres stifled, and he headed into free agency looking to find a new home for the second time. That new home came with a nice 3 years, $27 million deal across the country with the new look, not Florida, but now Miami Marlins, with a completely new rebrand heading into that 2012 season. A new stadium and new rebrand meant that the team was going in with Jose Reyes and Mark Burley, plus their homegrown stars. This could be a championship-winning formula. With former World Series manager Ozzie Guillen at the helm, things looked to be going up for Marlins fans. They were looking to win their first World Series in almost 10 years, and fans were excited about the prospect of getting one of the best teams in baseball to a World Series ring. However, not all good things in theory end up working out in the end. 2012 was an absolute disaster for the Miami Marlins, and despite all their additions and their talent on their roster, the team was an absolute mess. Bell was no exception. In his first 11 games, he went 0-3 with an 11.42 ERA and 4 blown saves in 7 opportunities as the Marlins closer, and for the next 2 weeks he was demoted from the closer role, but he was reinstated 2 weeks later by manager Ozzie Guillen. He was replaced again after slumping after the All-Star break by Steve Cishek and was told behind closed doors that he had no opportunity to go ahead and win this closer job back from Cishek. He struggled being away from family as well, who stayed in San Diego, and as a big family man, this really weighed on him heavily, and it was part of the reason why he mentioned in the past that he had struggled during this time. The second half, however, as coincidentally his kids came back from school and went out with him in Miami, things started to pick up, but because Guillen said he didn't have an opportunity to win back that closing role, a rift between him and manager Ozzie Guillen grew and really caused some drama at the end of the 2012 season. At the end of September, Heath Bell publicly went on a radio show and criticized Ozzie Guillen, saying that he never had the opportunity to win back that closer role, and he really didn't like the way Ozzie was running the club. The very next day, Guillen went on the Dan Le Batard show and said he had very little respect for Bell as a person. As a player, sure, but as a person, he did not have any. As a show of solidarity and support for their manager, they turned on that radio interview and blasted it in the clubhouse with Bell and the entire team in there, and it really put Bell on a really bad foot with the rest of the Marlins clubhouse. He mentioned that he lost the respect of almost every player in there, and he quickly became a persona non grata in the Marlins franchise. He finished 2012 with an okay stat line, but definitely not anywhere close to what he had in San Diego. A 4-5 record, a 5.09 ERA, a 1.555 WHIP, but again, his peripherals were solid, 3.72 FIP, and just shy of 20 saves. After that 2012 season, as most Marlins fans probably remember very poorly, they went on a complete fire sale after just 1 year of going all in, and Bell was one of the first pieces to go ahead and get traded. He was sent over to the Diamondbacks for pitcher Yordy Cabrera, who never made Major League Baseball, but not all was bad for Bell on the Marlins front. Just 3 days after the trade, the Marlins fired Ozzie Guillen, which was a combination of their really bad record last season, tiffs with owner Jeffrey Loria, who was also not a big fan of Ozzie Guillen and their relationship, and he also lost a ton of fan support, mostly stemming from the first week of the season, where he said he loves and respects Fidel Castro for staying in power. A lot of the local community turned against Ozzie, and things just weren't looking good, and after just 1 year in Miami, he's out, and now he's bound to suffer watching White Sox games, which might be an apt punishment for that. After going 81-81 last season, the Diamondbacks, though, looked to make a push in 2013 towards a playoff spot and knock off their division rival Giants from making another World Series. With J.J. Putz as a closer and David Hernandez as the setup man, Bell effectively slid into a middle high leverage role in the 7th inning that didn't require him to be dominant like he had been in San Diego, but just produce good innings. He quickly got put into high leverage situations though, as he was put into the closer role after JJ Putz hit the IL in May and put together an okay season in the desert, a 5-2 record, 4.41 ERA, 15 saves, but peripherals weren't great, a 4.10 FIP and a 1.371 WHIP just isn't great. The Diamondbacks also didn't improve, going 81-81 for the second straight season, which prompted them to go ahead and trade Bell back to the team that originally drafted him in 1997, the Tampa Bay Rays, in a 3-team deal. With Tampa Bay, however, he continued to struggle with only 17 innings pitched in a Rays uniform, a 7.27 ERA, a WHIP bordering 1.85, and a career low strikeouts per nine of 6.2. He was DFA'd in May and subsequently released, and though he hopped around between the Orioles, Rays, and Nationals minor league systems in spring training, he decided to retire ahead of the 2015 season because he wasn't going to make a major league roster and would much rather go ahead and play with his kids instead of playing baseball. However, post-career, he is still active in the scene as he does appear at a lot of camps for baseball, such as the Mets and the Padres, and he is a cameo superstar, but you probably won't see him around with his cousin Drake Bell. He's stuck in Mexico and is probably best left there. Because he did accrue more than 10 years of Major League service time, he did make the Hall of Fame ballot, but fell off it after just 1 year without receiving a single vote, which makes sense. He had some really high highs in San Diego with 3 All-Star Game appearances, a lot of fun in the sun down with the Friars, but at the end of the day, that's all he really had. His 3 years in the Mets uniform really don't have any highlights at all of him being a good pitcher, and after that, he was more of a highlight off the field than on it for his time in Miami, and continued to struggle in Arizona and Tampa Bay. If it wasn't for Trevor Hoffman, you could argue Bell was the best relief pitcher in Padres history. His 3-year stretch was pure dominance, but at the end of the day, that's all he had. As with a lot of relievers, your peak is generally pretty short, but for Bell, the way he came up at 29 and started just dominating for the Padres to only having a 3-year peak goes to show that maybe if he unlocked something before, or if he left the Mets organization just a little bit sooner, things would have turned out a little bit better for him. A couple more years of dominance and a couple more years in the spotlight. Even though now he's spending his time having fun with life, which is all you can really ask for in retirement, Bell is certainly someone who, in my mind, and I think a lot of Padres fans' minds, and a lot of fans of the early 2010s and late 2000s will say, one of the most fun relievers to watch in baseball. Thank you again for watching this entire video. There'll be 2 videos in the top left and top right for you to hit if you're interested. And as always, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.